All right, today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of looking at a whole law, we're zooming way in. We're going to unpack the story behind a single, absolutely crucial rule in the EU's landmark AI Act, Article 13. This is the story of how the rule on AI transparency was hammered out in a 3-year legislative battle. Let's get into it. So picture this. You apply for a loan, and you get rejected. You ask why, and the only answer you get is, sorry, the algorithm said no. That right there is the black box problem. It's when huge, life-changing decisions are made by AI systems that we can't really see inside of or understand. This is a massive challenge, and it's exactly what lawmakers in Europe set out to solve. And this is their answer. Article 13. I want you to think of it like a mandatory instruction manual that has to come with any high-risk AI system. Its whole job is to peel back those layers of complexity so these incredibly powerful tools can be used safely and fairly. But, as you'll see, the question of who that manual should be written for and what it should say, well, that was anything but simple. Okay, so let's rewind the clock. Our story kicks off back in 2021 with the European Commission's very first draft of the AI Act. And they had a pretty clear vision for what AI transparency should look like. And that vision, it was laser-focused on one person, the user. The original idea was that anyone interacting with a high-risk AI, think a doctor using a diagnostic tool or a citizen applying for government benefits, they were the ones who needed to understand it. The spotlight was completely on the end user. So, the initial requirements were pretty straightforward, common sense stuff. The manual needed to say who made the AI, what it could do, what it couldn't do, how accurate it was supposed to be, what kind of human oversight was needed, and roughly how long it was built to last. This was the starting line, the baseline for everything that came next. But of course, a proposal is just the beginning. What happened next was a classic legislative tug-of-war. You had different parts of the EU government pulling this law in completely different directions. And this is where that simple idea of a user manual got a whole lot more complicated. You can see the whole journey laid out right here. It starts with the Commission in 2021, then bam, the European Parliament committees jump in. Then the EU Council, which represents all the national governments, throws its version in the ring. The Parliament pushes back hard with an even stronger take. And finally, after all that debate, they reach a compromise in early 2024. Every single one of these steps changed the very DNA of Article 13. And this right here was the single most important change. The European Parliament came in and argued that focusing on the end user completely misses the most important player in the game, the deployer. That's the organization, the hospital, the bank, the police force, that actually decides to buy and implement the AI system. Their argument was simple. If the organization doesn't understand the tool it's using, how on earth can the end user ever stand a chance? And this quote just nails their thinking. The goal, as Parliament's committees put it, was all about enabling deployers to reasonably understand the system's functioning. This wasn't just swapping one word for another. It was a total philosophical shift about where the responsibility for AI safety and fairness really lies. What's so interesting is how this table captures the whole fight in a nutshell. I mean, look at the audience. The Commission and the Council started with users, but Parliament fought tooth and nail for deployers. And Parliament also pushed for brand new ideas, like requiring a description of the system's explainability and even mandating AI literacy. The Council wasn't so keen on those. It was a true negotiation, a real back and forth between very different priorities. So, after all of that debate, where did the law actually land? Let's take a look at the final compromise and see what Article 13 looks like on the books today. Well, on the biggest point of disagreement, the Parliament won. Big time. The final official title of Article 13 is literally Transparency and Provision of Information to Deployers. This shift is so critical because it puts the legal burden of responsibility squarely on the shoulders of the organization, the bank, the hospital, not just the individual employee using the software. It's a huge move toward real corporate accountability for the tech they choose to use. So what's actually in this final manual? First up, the performance basics. It has to clearly state the AI's intended purpose, its tested levels of accuracy and security, and any known situations that might cause risks. But check out that last point. It also has to describe the system's technical capabilities for explaining its own output. That's the big compromise on explainability, and it's a direct result of the Parliament's push.
The manual also has to cover the nitty-gritty of actually running the system. It needs to detail all the required human oversight measures, the kind of hardware you need to run it properly, and its expected lifetime. And crucially, it has to describe the system's logging mechanisms. That way, if something goes wrong, there's a record, a digital paper trail that can be audited for accountability.
So let's step back for a second. A single article was debated for 3 years. Why does all this intense focus on a user manual actually matter in the real world? What's the big deal? Well, here are the real-world consequences. First, those deployers, the banks and hospitals, they get their manual. But it also means the legal responsibility is now on them to understand it and use the AI correctly. Second, AI developers can't just ship a black box anymore. They have to build detailed documentation into their process from day one. And finally, this becomes the blueprint. The EU has basically set the global gold standard for what AI transparency and accountability should look like. So if we're keeping score in this legislative battle, who really came out on top? Well, the focus on the deployer was a massive, clear victory for the Parliament's vision. On the other hand, their push for a specific mandate on AI literacy, that didn't make the final cut. And on the crucial topic of explainability, they landed on a compromise. Not everything they wanted for sure, but a huge leap forward from where this whole thing started. And that leaves us with this final thought. The European Union has gone through this incredibly detailed multi-year process to write the most comprehensive instruction manual for high-risk AI in the entire world. It's a landmark achievement. But a manual, no matter how good it is only useful if someone actually reads it and understands it. The law is now written, but the real test of its success, that has only just begun.